Who's going to save you? No, really. Have you ever asked yourself that question? In the silence, when no one else is around to give you false hope? You're stuck. You're tired. You've been waiting. But waiting for what exactly? For things to magically improve? For someone to notice your struggle? For a sign, a call, a miracle? Let me tell you the truth. The truth most people won't say out loud. No one is coming. No superhero, no rich uncle, no secret admirer who lift you from the chaos. If you want out, you'll have to do it yourself. It's a hard truth, but it's also the most empowering. Because once you accept that it's all on you, you realize you have more control than you ever imagined. This video is for anyone who's ever felt stuck, forgotten, invisible. It's for you if you've ever said, "I'll start tomorrow," and then woke up to the same day again and again. It's time to break that cycle. It's time to wake up. Because the only person who's coming to save you is the one you see in the mirror. And to prove that, let me tell you a story. Not about luck, not about talent, but about relentless will. Let's talk about Cristiano Ronaldo. Part 1. The Dream Life. Private jets, supercars, multi-million-dollar mansions, statues in his honor, hundreds of millions of fans. Cristiano Ronaldo lives the kind of life most people only see in movies. He's the top scorer in Champions League history. He's won 5 Ballon d'Or awards. He's the only player to win league titles in England, Spain, and Italy. He's a global icon, a brand, a legend. But here's the truth most people forget. He wasn't born this way. Part 2. Where it began. Cristiano was born in a small, humble home on the island of Madeira, Portugal, the youngest of 4 children. His father was a kitman at a local football club. His mother worked as a cook and cleaner. They had nothing. Ronaldo shared a room with all his siblings. Sometimes they didn't have enough food. And at one point, his mother admitted she considered aborting him because they simply couldn't afford another child. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the smartest, but he had one thing that couldn't be measured: hunger. At age 12, he left home, alone. He moved to mainland Portugal to chase a dream no one else believed in. He lived in a dormitory far from his family. He cried every night. Kids mocked his accent, laughed at his skinny body. But he trained every day, every night. He ran more. He stayed later. He wanted it more. Part 3. Obsession. Cristiano didn't become great by accident. He became great because he refused to be average. Teammates tell stories of him doing push-ups in his hotel room while others slept, practicing headers until his neck hurt, sprinting up hills alone, skipping desserts, parties, vacations. He didn't just want to be good. He wanted to be the best ever. And he acted like it long before anyone else saw it. He said, "Your love makes me strong. Your hate makes me unstoppable." Criticism? He used it. Doubt? He fed on it. Every setback, fuel. Even when he had everything, money, fame, trophies, he kept pushing. At 30, when others slowed down, he trained harder. He tracked every meal, optimized every recovery. He spent hours perfecting what others called good enough. When he moved to Juventus, people asked, "Why? You've already done it all." But he hadn't done it all for himself. He still had more to prove to himself. He said, "Talent without work is nothing." And he proved it year after year. Part 5. The Lesson. Cristiano Ronaldo was not chosen. He chose himself. He built his life from the ground up. He didn't wait to be saved. He saved himself every single day. And that's your lesson. Stop waiting. Start building. No one is coming to save you. But you're already here. Shia LaBeouf, the redemption no one saw coming. You've probably heard the name. Maybe from Transformers, maybe from Indiana Jones, maybe from some tabloid scandal that painted him as Hollywood's latest train wreck. But what you probably haven't heard is the real story. And I didn't either until I started preparing this episode. Because behind the fame, the red carpets, and the chaos is a story of deep pain, self-destruction, and something rare, rebirth. Shia LaBeouf grew up far from the glitz of Hollywood. His childhood was a rough patchwork of instability and trauma. He was raised in Echo Park, Los Angeles, by a father who was a war veteran battling drug addiction and mental illness. His mother, a dancer and visual artist, struggled to make ends meet. They were poor, not just tight on cash poor, living in a motel, stealing to survive poor. Shia has described his upbringing as the bottom. His father once held a gun to his head during a PTSD episode. His home was chaos. There was no safety net, no structure, no peace. He started performing stand-up comedy at age 10, not because he dreamed of the spotlight, but because his family needed money. He literally called casting agents from the Yellow Pages, pretending to be his own manager. That's how desperate he was to get out. And he did get out. Kind of. He landed a role on the Disney Channel show Even Stevens. It gave him a taste of stability. Then came Holes, then Transformers, then Wall Street. By his early 20s, he was a household name. But fame is not healing, and money doesn't erase pain. Beneath the surface, the little boy from Echo Park was still there, afraid, angry, and lost. What followed were years of spiraling. He was arrested multiple times for public drunkenness, disorderly conduct, assault. He heckled police officers, wore paper bags on his head to red carpet events, screamed at strangers on the street. His name became a punchline. The industry began to turn its back. But here's the truth. Shia wasn't acting out to rebel. He was drowning. He later admitted, "I had this nihilistic attitude. Everything I did was a scream for help." There was a moment when it all nearly ended. In 2017, after another drunken outburst and arrest, Shia reached his bottom. The court ordered him into rehab, not just for substance abuse, but for trauma therapy. And that's when something shifted. In group therapy, Shia was forced to confront the boy inside him, the broken child, the chaos, the rage, the shame. He began to write, not a script, not a movie, but his own story. A story about his childhood, his father, his trauma. That story became Honey Boy, a film he wrote during rehab. And here's the kicker. He didn't just write the story. He played his own father in the movie. He embodied the man who had hurt him. He stepped into his abuser's shoes, not to excuse him, but to understand him. That's not acting. That's a form of self-exorcism. The process broke him open, and from those pieces he began to rebuild, not his career, but himself. He said, "My pain created art, and my art forced me to face my pain." He found faith, he found stillness, he found recovery. Not because someone saved him, but because no one did, because he had to do it alone. And he did. That's the lesson. No one is coming. No one will fix your childhood, or heal your scars, or carry your burden. It's on you. And it's terrifying, but it's also empowering. Because if the fall was yours, so is the rise.
Shia LaBeouf didn't get a second chance handed to him. He created it. He turned his breakdown into a breakthrough. He wrote his way out of the darkness. He played the man who hurt him and walked out the other side a different person. It didn't happen on a movie set. It happened in silence, in therapy, in sweat, in tears. Ask yourself, what pain are you still running from? What truth are you afraid to face? What version of yourself is waiting on the other side of honesty? You don't need fame to heal. You don't need applause to grow. You don't need saving. You just need to decide, I will carry my own weight. I will be my own rescue. And if Shia LaBeouf could crawl out of that wreckage, maybe you can too.
Eminem, no one came to save him. Today, he's a legend, a cultural icon, an Oscar winner, a Grammy magnate, the best-selling rapper of all time. When he walks onto a stage, the world listens. His words aren't just lyrics, they're scars turned into poetry. Every syllable punches like a confession. Every rhyme is a battle he's already survived. But rewind the tape. Before the fame, before Lose Yourself, before the alter ego, before the stadiums and the platinum records, he was just Marshall. Marshall Mathers, a skinny white kid from Detroit, born in Missouri, raised in a broken trailer home by a mother struggling with addiction. His father? Gone before he could walk. His neighborhood? Brutal. Violence was common. Hunger was normal. He changed schools more than 30 times before he was even a teenager. And if that wasn't enough, he was constantly bullied, beaten, humiliated, mocked. He was the outsider, the wrong skin color in a predominantly black school, too poor for friends, too weak to fight back. No one was coming to save him. So, he found refuge in one thing: words, rhymes. The rhythm of language became a lifeline. At 14, he started rapping under the name Eminem. Not many took him seriously. A white boy in a black-dominated art form, that was a joke to most. But he wasn't trying to impress them. He was trying to survive. He would lock himself in a room and study the dictionary, page by page, just to expand his vocabulary. He treated rhyming like a science, writing lines, scratching them out, writing better ones, not for applause, but because it was the only way to process what was happening inside. At 17, he dropped out of high school, not because he was lazy, but because he'd been held back 3 times. He was never dumb. He just had no one to guide him. He took a job washing dishes at a family restaurant for $5.50 an hour. He'd work the late shift, then come home to a cold apartment and spend the night writing lyrics by candlelight. His dream? To make it in hip-hop. Not to be rich, not to be famous, just to matter. But life didn't give a damn about his dream. His first demo tapes were ignored. His early shows were a disaster. And when he finally got a shot, performing at open mic battles, he was laughed off stage more than once. He got booed. He got jumped. He got told to quit. Still, he came back. Every week, sharper, funnier, meaner. His rhymes cut deeper. And then came his daughter, Haley. He was 24, broke, unmarried, living in a moldy apartment with no heat. He couldn't afford diapers. He couldn't afford food. He attempted suicide. But something pulled him back. Maybe it was Haley.
Maybe it was that voice inside that whispered, "This can't be the end." Whatever it was, he doubled down. He created Slim Shady, an alter ego that could say what Marshall never dared: violent, unapologetic, unfiltered. Slim said what the world didn't want to hear. And finally, people listened. In 1997, Dr. Dre heard his demo tape. It was raw, it was angry, it was genius. And for the first time, someone believed in him. But even that wasn't a rescue. It was just a door, and Marshall had to kick it open with both feet. He recorded the Slim Shady LP in a matter of weeks. It was dark. It was ugly. It was honest. It went multi-platinum. And just like that, Marshall Mathers became Eminem. Fame exploded, and with it lawsuits, protests, controversy. People said he was dangerous. He said, good. But behind the curtain, he was still fighting. With addiction, with depression, with pressure, with himself. He lost friends, he lost years, he almost lost his life. But he kept writing. Because when everything else was chaos, the pen was still his sword. When asked how he made it, he said, "You can make something of your life. It just depends on your drive. Not your background, not your luck, your drive." Because no one came to save him. Not in Detroit, not in the studio, not on the bathroom floor with a handful of pills. He got up on his own, again and again. He became his own rescue team. And that's the lesson. Not just for artists, not just for rappers, for anyone who's ever looked around and thought, "Why isn't anyone helping me?" Because sometimes there is no help coming. There's no applause, there's no encouragement, there's no miracle. Just you. You and your pain. You and your decision to quit or to fight. Eminem chose to fight. And every time you hear his voice, you're hearing a man who clawed his way out of a coffin he built for himself. Not because someone pulled him out, but because he refused to stay buried.
Let me share with you one more story. The man who got fired from his own company. The Steve Jobs story. They fired him. The man who co-founded Apple. The visionary who turned a garage project into a global phenomenon. The icon who introduced the world to the Macintosh. Who stood on stages and talked about dreams bigger than logic could hold. At 30, he stood at the top of the world. And then, he was gone. Not with a bang, not with some heroic rebellion, just a quiet vote behind closed doors. A boardroom decision. And Steve Jobs was out. From the very company he created. Fired by the people he had once hired. He walked out of that building with a box in his hands, and nothing else. No titles, no office, no team, no purpose. He was not yet the myth. Not yet the man in the black turtleneck. Just a guy in exile, wandering the streets of Silicon Valley, trying to figure out what just happened. And no one came to save him. He could have disappeared then, and many thought he would. Tech magazines buried him under headlines like "Brilliant but Broken." Investors moved on. Apple, without him, began to rot from within. But here's what most people don't know. Steve Jobs was adopted, given up at birth, raised by working-class parents who never went to college. His childhood was filled with questions about where he came from, why he was unwanted, and whether he really mattered. And maybe that's why rejection hit him so hard. But maybe that's also why he refused to be defined by it. He took the pain, and he didn't bury it. He studied it. He asked what it was trying to teach him, and then he built again. He founded a new company, Next, a small team, a black cube computer that almost nobody bought. Years of failure. But in those quiet years, Jobs became someone else. Not just a brilliant mind, but a disciplined one. Not just a dreamer, but a builder, a leader, a man who learned to listen, not just speak. He also poured his passion into a small animation studio he'd bought from George Lucas. It was struggling, barely surviving, but Steve believed in its soul. That studio? Pixar. They made Toy Story, and suddenly a new chapter began. But the best part of the story? It wasn't over. In 1997, Apple was dying. Profits were gone. Products were a mess. The world had moved on. And the company made a desperate call to the man they once pushed out. They asked him to come back. And he did. Not to say, "I told you so," but to rebuild. He returned stronger, sharper, calmer. He cut products, redesigned the company, and with a tiny team, launched the iMac, then the iPod, then the iPhone, the iPad, iTunes, Apple stores. He didn't just build devices. He changed culture. He changed how we listen, how we talk, how we see the world. But none of it would have happened if he hadn't been first broken. That's the lesson. Sometimes the fall is not the end. Sometimes it's the beginning. You don't become Steve Jobs because everything goes right. You become him when everything goes wrong, and you rise anyway. When no one believes in you, when the world moves on, when even your own company turns its back on you. And you still build, you still dream, you still fight, because no one is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your boss, not your friends, not the audience cheering you when you're on top and gone when you fall. Just you. That's what Steve Jobs understood. That's what made him dangerous. That's what made him great. Not perfection, but persistence.
The rescue you're waiting for is you. Let's pause for a second. You've heard their stories now. Ronaldo, LaBeouf, Eminem, Jobs, giants, legends, icons. But not because someone saved them, not because someone handed them a lifeline, because they decided to become their own. And now, here you are, still listening, still here. That alone tells me something important. You know this isn't just a video. You know this is about you. Maybe you've been waiting for a sign, for the right time, for motivation to hit like lightning bolt and lift you off the couch, waiting for someone to come along and fix it all, your body, your career, your life. But let me say this as clearly as possible. No one is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your partner, not your boss, not the government, not some perfect mentor who appears out of nowhere and shows you the path. It's you. It's always been you. You are the lifeline. You are the solution. You're the hero you've been hoping would show up. And yes, that's terrifying.
Because if it's on you, then so is the responsibility, so is the failure, so is the pain. But here's the trade-off. So is the power. When you stop outsourcing your life, you take it back. You stop waiting for permission. You stop asking the world to give you a break. You stop needing someone else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. You become dangerous. Not because you're reckless, but because you're no longer dependent on the applause, the praise, the push. You move on your own. Look at those we just talked about. They weren't handed their path. They fought for it. They weren't built in comfort. They were forged in the fire. They didn't wait. They moved. Now it's your turn. This isn't about becoming famous. It's about becoming real. About choosing to stand up even when your legs shake. About choosing to keep walking even though the road is lonely. About becoming the kind of person you'd admire, not because they have everything, but because they earned everything. So here's the truth you've been avoiding but already knew deep down. No one is coming. There is no cavalry. There is no right time. There is just now, and there's just you. And the beautiful, brutal truth is that's enough. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need a green light from the universe. You don't need saving. What you need is the courage to act. Even if it's messy, even if it's small, even if it's just a whisper of momentum, a walk instead of a run, a step instead of a leap. Because that's how it starts. That's how they all started. And that's how you rise. So when you look in the mirror tomorrow, don't ask for miracles. Ask for honesty. Ask for discipline. Ask for the fire. Then do what you know you need to do. Because the longer you wait, the louder the comfort gets. And the louder it gets, the quieter your potential becomes. But today you made a choice. You listened. You stayed. You showed up. So keep showing up. Not for views, not for likes, not even for recognition. Do it because you matter. Because your story is still being written. Because deep inside, you're not done yet. You're just getting started.